So content standards are great, but there's a lot of things that they don't cover because there's a lot more to life than just social studies and science and content. So Lillian Katz suggests a more appropriate approach would be looking at standards of experience. And what she says is that we should ask ourselves if young children have frequent opportunities to experience things such as intellectual engagement, absorbing and challenging activities, taking initiative and accepting responsibilities, experiencing the satisfaction of overcoming obstacles and solving problems, and applying literacy and numeracy skills in purposeful ways. So rather than trying to teach specific skill sets or topics, that we should really be looking at the overall way we're educating children and asking ourselves, are they getting the kinds of learning experiences that are going to be important for their development? This is just a bunch of contributions to development in all the different areas of curriculum. We're not going to go over this, and you do not need to know this. So we're going to talk about the different areas of curriculum. So the first area of curriculum is called physical curriculum, and it includes gross motor curriculum, fine motor curriculum, and sensory development curriculum. So as you can imagine, all of this is focused on the physical development of the child. So gross motor curriculum is worried about development of arms, legs, and torso. It includes movement and physical activity, and that's going to include both locomotor and non-locomotor skills. So locomotor skills being the skills like walking and running and things that transport a child from one place to another, and non-locomotor skills being the skills of like twisting and bending and things that don't require that don't transport a child but are large muscle skill movement things, and then movement and physical activity, so anything that involves using the large muscles, whether it's riding a bike, running, hopping, climbing, is going to fall under this. A fine motor curriculum is going to include things that are control, strength, agility, and coordination of your hands, fingers, wrists, and arms. And it also includes hand-eye coordination. And so this is just the idea of being able to use your hands correctly with agility, to be able to pick up small things, to be able to manipulate objects while they're in your hands. And kids need a lot of time playing with sensory type materials that are going to give them this coordination in their hands that's going to cause them to use both hands at the same time. They need to be able to pick things up and put them in something else. It should be puzzles and manipulative toys. There should be drawing and painting and using scissors and gluing and just things that require finesse and coordination. And by around 2, most kids already have a hand preference. And so you should be able to see that in children as well. The sensory development curriculum is a curriculum that helps develop the ability to receive and use sensory input. It includes sensation and perception. So this is, again, those sensory tables that you might use that you might fill with sand or water or moon sand or goo or something to that effect, so that kids can get a feel for a lot of different things. It could include sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and it could include kinesthetic activities where there's movement or touching. So like finger painting, making a collage, using Play-Doh, tasting things. Most field trips are considered sensory development because they're getting input from all of their senses. And there's just a lot of different things you can do with the sensory curriculum, especially at the younger ages. The second kind of curriculum we're going to talk about is the communication curriculum. And this is language, literacy, and literature. So when it comes to language, we're talking about the skills of listening and understanding and using language. So talking skills or speaking skills, listening skills. This is an area where if students have more than one language, it's going to be extra hard for them to learn and learn our language and how to communicate in it, how to use our language correctly. There are 5 aspects of language that you teach children while you are helping them learn this. One of them is syntax or grammar, which is the rules of language. The second thing is morphology, and that's the structure of words, things like adding suffixes and prefixes. The third thing is semantics, which is the meaning of words. The fourth thing is phonology, which is the sounds of words. And the fifth thing is pragmatics, which is the social conventions of language and how we use words. And so there's a lot that goes into teaching a language. And the best part about teaching a language is that most of this is quite natural and happens from the minute we start developing in the womb until we basically don't communicate anymore. We are always learning language. And this comes fairly naturally to most kids, especially in the early years. So, yeah. There are a few things you can do with children to make it easier for them to learn and understand language. And these in your textbook on page 379 are called the golden rules of having a conversation with a young child. And I'm just going to read through these really quick for you. The first one is to crouch or sit at the child's eye level. We've talked about that a lot. Second one is show attention physically as well as verbally. So use eye contact, smiles, and nods. The third one is take turns and participate and make sure that they have a chance to have that conversation, even if they are nonverbal. You want to give them a chance to articulate their sounds and thoughts to you. The fourth thing is to read nonverbal communication. So notice and think about what you see in the child. If you see them smiling, it says, oh, it looks like you're pretty happy, and really help them to identify and name different words and terms for their emotions and different things like that. So use their body language to help describe what you're seeing in them. Number 6 is to listen, to actually focus on what the kid says. And help them extend. So if they give you a short sentence, you could help them extend that, give them some more things to add on by asking clarifying questions. Number 7 is select what to say carefully. With children, you want to make it brief and to the point, not like me where I ramble on forever. Use vocabulary that's simple, but don't use baby words or fake language. And then number 8, the golden rule is to remember it's a quiz. It's not a quiz or a lecture. So you don't have to ask a ton of questions about stuff. You can just say things like, I like that too, or I didn't know that, because questions can sometimes be conversation stoppers for kids. The second part of communication curriculum is literacy, and literacy is being able to read and write. And this, again, like language, the emergent literacy, which is the evolving process of becoming literate. Emergent literacy starts early. It starts at birth. It does start with learning language, and it moves right along into learning the sounds of words, and learning the alphabet, and then learning the sounds of those letters, and then learning how to write those letters, and then putting all that together. And I mean, it's a process, and people don't become literate until kindergarten or first grade, where they can write and read in a conventional way. And then the last part of the communication curriculum is literature, which is just basically learning how to read. And this has to start with the concepts of print, which there's another set of golden rules on page 381. I'm not going to go through all of these because it's kind of long, but you've got to introduce kids to books really early on. Within that first year, you can even start reading to them before they're even born, when they're still in the womb, because that's part of language development, is hearing words even before they've come out. And so you want to introduce books. This helps them with their vocabulary and learning new words, but it also helps them understand books and how they work, that there's a front and a back. There's a certain way you should hold it, that you turn the pages. And it also starts connecting with kids that when you read to them, they start understanding that the words coming out of your mouth have something to do with what they're seeing on the page. And that's a really big concept, that information can come from what you see on a page, and connecting that idea of the words on that page are the same thing that mom is saying to me right now. Um, Another thing you can do is to use print for real reasons instead of just sitting down and reading to kids, is just modeling for them all the different ways that we use print, whether that be looking at signs when you go to stores or you're in the car. It could be showing them recipes when you're cooking in the kitchen. It could be looking at the directions on a box of something and how to make it, or it could be the directions on a game that you're trying to play, so that you're helping them understand that words can help you learn about how to play games or whatever. And as you've seen in a lot of early childhood classrooms, another thing you can really do that helps is to just label everything. So the trash can has a label that says trash can, and the cupboard says cupboard, and everything like that, so that as kids walk around their classroom or their house, they're starting to connect what the word that they know the word for trash can, they use the word for trash can, but now they're starting to see what it looks like and make that connection between the written word and the spoken word. um, Again, with this emergent literacy, going a little bit deeper into that, the evolving process by which children become literate, I kind of just talked about all of this, but some of the skills that we need for literacy is oral language. So kids need to be able to use language and talk. They need vocabulary, and they need to have a large vocabulary. So the more words you use with young children, the better. You want to keep it simple, but you also want to expose them to new words on a regular basis, and that can come from books or just standard conversations that you're having. Phonological awareness is the idea of that each letter has a sound. Alphabetic knowledge is the knowledge of the letters, what they look like, what they sound like. Print knowledge is understanding what the purpose of words are in a book or on a piece of paper. And then book knowledge is that knowledge of there's a front and a back, there's a cover, there's a backside, there's an author, and all of that stuff. Language curriculum, kind of talked about this already. Both verbal and nonverbal language falls into this. This, like I said before, includes dual language learners, and the 5 aspects I've already talked about, but I'll list them one more time, and that's syntax, morphology, semantics, phonology, and pragmatics. And if you need to write this one down or whatever, you can pause this. And then the literature curriculum includes all the genres of literature. So fiction, informational books, mood or concept books, poetry collections. So you want to make sure in your library that you have some of all of these things, so that children can start to learn there's different reasons for using books. You might want to use a book for entertainment, and you might choose literature for that. And you might want to use books for information. So you're going to choose a dictionary or another informational book to that effect. So teaching kids that there's different purposes for different kinds of books. Some of the qualities of good literature is going to be that it shows respect for the reader, and it doesn't put anybody down or anything. This list is also in your textbook on page 382. That it's written and illustrated with craftsmanship, that it's interesting to look at. It has integrity. It teaches by example. It doesn't preach. It doesn't moralize. It just shows a story that helps kids learn. It helps the reader understand. It interests and delights children, and it's not based on movies, TVs, or products. It's not trying to sell something. It's just a good story. The next type of curriculum, I guess I'm going to point out really quick. I'm going to go back to the slide and just point out really quick that on page 383, there are golden rules for reading a story to a group. If we were in class, I would totally have you guys practicing reading to kids by sticking to these 9 rules for reading to a group. But I'm going to go ahead and just read these to you really quick. The first thing is you need to practice so that you know the story well and can pronounce all the words. The worst thing you can do, I guess the most embarrassing thing you can do in front of a bunch of 5-year-olds, is read a book for the first time and realize that you don't know all the words in that book or how to pronounce them. So kind of read it ahead of time so you know all the words. And if it's a rhyming book, it will help you get your timing down for that. Rule number 2 is to sit close to the children on a low stool or a chair so the children can see the book. Rule number 3, focus the group with a song or finger play or by showing the cover of the book and talking about it. So you want to hook them in somehow. Number 4 is have an alternative activity for young children or children with disabilities so they can leave if they get restless. For some teachers, that's just giving some kids a stress ball or something to have in their hands so that they can distract themselves. Number 5, use a natural voice and make sure to speak clearly and loud enough for the group to hear. Number 6 is be expressive. Match your voice, volume, tempo, facial expression, pauses, and gestures to the content of the story. There's nothing worse than listening to somebody read a book out loud in a monotone voice that doesn't change at all, no matter what's happening in the story. And you're going to lose a lot of kids if you read like that. Number 7 is stick to the story. Avoid asking too many questions or interrupting with too many comments. There's a time and a place for using questioning while you're reading, but you don't want to overwhelm the kids so that they forget what the story is. Number 8, pay attention to the children, like make eye contact with them, notice their faces and bodies, and have children move if they're restless, and then continue reading. So feel free to interrupt if you need to very quickly to make things better. And then number 9, leave them wanting more. Quit before they're tired, bored, and restless. And that might mean that you don't get through the whole story, and that's okay. You just come back to it later if you can't get through the whole thing, but read the room and don't try to read a book to kids who are not ready to listen to a book.